How y'all this morning? We're going to run through the ministry teams. Those of you that don't know, my name is Homer Dickey. I'm currently serving as an elder at Barna and Cowboy Church in Tatum, and also work for the American Fellowship of Cowboy Churches. Today, they've asked me to kind of conduct the session on ministry teams, and ministry teams, in my perspective, is probably one of the foundations of Cowboy Church. It saves if they're implemented right and they're acting right or enforced and put in place. They're going to save a pastor their longevity. If you'll turn to page 11 in that booklet on ministry teams, it says teams implement the specialized ministries of the church. Each has a specific function and responsibility that is assigned or approved by the pastor and or elders. Examples include finance, facility, arena, student ministries. There's some churches that's got 20-something plus ministry teams. Just those are created as a need is raised in that particular area or in that particular church. There's some churches that might have, like Bar None, for instance, has a therapeutic writing, ministry. Not every church is going to have that. Some is going to have different teams that others are not, and that's just going to come to the as needed basis for those churches. You'll see in your book the second category down is the 5C corner post test. You'll hear a lot of the 5 C's mentioned in most of your team meetings, should be in every team meeting, and basically all that does is it covers the basics on when you're making decisions on behalf of the church. Your first C is make sure that if you're coming to a decision on a ministry team, make sure it's Christ-centered. What you're doing is trying to reach someone and is going to honor Christ. The second one is cost-effective. There's multiple areas when it comes to being cost-effective. Financially is one of them. If your church is large enough to have a team budget, then make sure that when you're making those plans to have those events, make sure that your ministries team still has enough in their budget to make sure that event can go forward. The second layer to that is once you verify that your team has the money, the next step is to verify your church has the money. Because I like to use the word monopoly money. Most of your budgets are monopoly money. The money is not sitting in the account whenever they present that budget for, just say 2024 is coming up, so most churches are working on their 2024 budget at this time. January 1st rolls around, that 2024 budget, whatever is voted on, that money is not sitting in that account. So you've got to make sure that if your team is doing some type of event, probably in the first quarter, it's highly likely that the money might be short in the church account. So just make sure that number one, your team has the money in their budget. Number two, that the church has the money sitting in the account in order for you to go ahead and move forward in that ministry. The second part of cost effective is spirituality. Make sure that whatever you're planning is not going to bring a black eye to the church. Sometimes it's Cowboy Church, so people are going to have some ideas that are pretty far-fetched, but that's just dealing with Cowboy Church people. But just make sure that, number one, you've got the money. Number two, it's not going to bring any kind of black eye or any type of derogatory statement towards your church. And the third one is a physical cost. I personally seen this in my family in the early days of Cowboy Church. Most of y'all here are probably going to be servants in your church. Therefore, you're probably going to wear many hats and doing the weekly ministry of your local church. You can get so busy doing ministry that you also bring harm against your family. And what I mean by that is you can get so wrapped up in doing stuff up here that you're not taking care of business with your kids and your wife. That's just being real. I can just remember, my daughter suffering in school because she was tagging along with us and sleeping on the stage during the week when we was in the midst of building that church in East Texas. So just be careful as pastors and shepherds and elders and lay pastors, if you see guys that's up there every day of the week and they've got a family and they've got a wife, just make sure that that church is not becoming a barrier within their family. Does that make sense? Moving on to the third part of the 5C is constitutional. Constitutional is the team members and the consensus members. They need to have read the church constitution and bylaws. All decisions made need to be in agreement with the church's constitution and bylaws. Elders do not have authority of the church, so elders do have spiritual authority of the church. So team decisions needs to be in line with the church leadership and values and the mission statements. Just make sure that whatever that team is deciding on and trying to do outreach, make sure it's lining up with the way that the church wants to go. The 4C, or I guess the next one on your list is consensus. In Ephesians 4, it tells us, make every effort to keep unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. The best way to keep peace is to be unified as a body. Consensus basically forces us to be unified. Consensus means everybody on that team, or at least the consensus members on that team, has to agree on that decision. You know, there's so many times to where, and some of the traditional churches or even some of the Cowboy churches still do that vote deal. And when you have a vote, typically you have the grand opportunity of having a winner and a loser. And when someone don't get their way, I'm sorry, there's going to be hurt feelings. And you're not going to have a unified body there. So when this forces us to come into consensus, not every decision is going to be 100% unanimous the first time you present it. Sometimes you're going to have to pray about it. Sometimes you're going to have to table it. Sometimes you're going to have to discuss and make a point of list your pros, list your cons, you know, and there might be some men and women out there that don't necessarily agree with that. Table it, pray about it. Come back a week later and see if anything has changed. You know, hopefully they can come to consensus and talk about it and discuss it to where everybody, and even if you have to agree to disagree, but you're willing to move forward as a unified body to move forward with that decision of whatever you're trying to plan. If you can't get to that point, then it goes to the elder body, and then they'll make the decision. The fifth C is culturally relevant. Just make sure that what you're trying to plan is going to attract the people that you're trying to reach. Sometimes, you know, in a Cowboy church, anything you do in the arena, a lot of times it's going to be culturally relevant. You know, don't get caught up in trying to make a kids program culturally relevant. Kids are kids. Whether you're dealing with the little bitty snot-nosed toddlers or the half-grown teenagers that think you're not cool anymore, don't try to make it. Just make it to where you can do ministry for kids. Don't get hung up on the cultural relevant when it comes to the kids and the youth. Moving to the next category down, it's called decision making. Teams never vote. Team decisions are supported by all consensus members of the team. If consensus cannot be reached, the matter should be tabled and prayed about for a designated period of time before being put back on the agenda. If consensus still cannot be reached after a time of prayer and decision must be made, the matter is referred to the elders. Some of the key points at the bottom, it talks about ministry teams that have their own budget line item must make a justified budget request to the audit team or finance team for the annual budget. I know my church right now is going through the budget process of trying to plan for 2024. So the teams are trying to evaluate and turn in budgets that they're going to try to project for 2024. Each team is responsible for staying within its budget and giving an account of all activities at the monthly leadership team meeting. Some churches do a monthly meeting. We try to do it the second Sunday of every month to where all of your elders, your pastor, lay pastors, team leaders, you know, all of your core leadership is going to gather up. Sometimes we just do a light meal and discuss what's coming up. A lot of times that's where teams can work together. If there's a big event coming up, Like for instance, if you was hosting one of these schools, you know, there might be several teams that has to work together to prepare for this. I know just not 2 or 3 people did this. You know, you have the people that's going to feed us lunch. You have the people for the facility getting it ready. You have the band. You know, so there's several arms and legs that work together to prepare for today. And leadership meeting would provide a platform for those men and women to kind of discuss and start that planning process of putting together that particular event. Teams determine what they will do in a particular area of ministry and choose how to allocate their budget dollars, however major decisions that could affect church direction or church-sponsored activities that require coordination with other teams. I just kind of visited with that. Teams must hold firmly to the mission statement and values of the church and have their own purpose statement to help guide that team direction. It's always positive when that particular team has its own mission statement of what it's together for, what its purpose as a team is to help benefit that church and what their role is there. Another explanation of consensus is a general agreement about something, an idea or opinion that is shared by all the people in a group. When you have consensus on a decision, you avoid individual ownership. Individual ownership, just to kind of explain that, man, it's real easy to get in Cowboy Church, especially if someone has been over a particular area of ministry for a long period of time. It can almost become their personal preference of what outreach is done. Some of the examples that I use is from years being in arena ministry, and no offense, but you can really get stuck in a rut when you're doing arena ministry. If you're doing the same events year in and year out, and you're not trying to reach in a different demographic or a different type of event, you know, you can really get stuck on ownership there. So what I recommend on teams is, or the AFCC recommends, is trying to roll in new members and new leaders every 2 to 3 years at the least. You know, just to get new ideas and new personalities into that mix. Not to say that those current leaders can't serve. They can still serve on that, but give some other people opportunity to serve and maybe move to a different area of ministry within your church. If you'll turn the page over, some of the team structure, you're going to hear about lay pastor, that role in that team structure a little bit later. I'm not going to go over that. I am going to talk about the team leader. The team leader is appointed by the pastor or by others given the authority by the pastor. The team leader is a consensus member. Some of the duties of a team leader is calling, creating an agenda for the meetings. That is one of the most important things as a team leader, is creating an agenda. Write down, I don't care what you write it on, whether it's a napkin, a feed sack, if you're professionally like Jimmy Holloman, to where you print it out on a piece of paper. You know, have an agenda so that when you're having that meeting, you can keep track of what's been decided on and what needs to be discussed. Otherwise, when you get people together, there'll be 20 conversations going on before you can blink an eye. So have an agenda as a team leader. Designate someone to keep minutes. That way you can kind of go back and pull back up some of the things that you've already decided, instead of having to go back and spin your wheels week in and week out on your meetings. As a team leader, you're going to facilitate the meeting. You're going to confirm that all decisions pass the 5C test. As a team leader, you've got to know your consensus members. Some of your smaller churches might not have a large team, but most of your consensus needs to be probably 6 to 8 members. Is typically, if you've got a team larger than that, then the consensus members is just a portion of that team, 6 to 8 members. So as a leader, you're going to make sure that all of those members are in agreement. You're going to confirm that all decisions pass the 5C test. You're going to verify consensus on all decisions made, and then represent the team at the leadership meetings. Guys, the team leader does not need to assume that they're the boss of that team. Their hands need to be just as dirty as the other team members. Besides the team leaders, you have team members, and they're listed by the consensus members. individual functions and responsibilities. They do not have to be members of the church. They're not consensus members. However, they may take part in team discussions. Basically, team members is just someone that wants to serve open and shut gates. They may not have felt comfortable enough to join the church, and because they hadn't joined the church and we hadn't had that opportunity to know they're saved, we really don't want them making decisions on behalf of the church. But it's a way for us to bring those guys in and ladies in and let them be a part of that group and to show them the love of Christ with the intent of reaching them and allowing them to open up and hopefully receive Christ as their Savior. The last category there is consensus members. Once a ministry team exceeds 8 team members, it needs to be transitioned into using consensus members along with team members. Consensus members then become the decision-making part of that team, appointed by the pastor or others given authority by that pastor, must be active, resident members of the church in good standing. That means you got to have someone that's coming on a regular basis. Active and resident in good standing means they don't need to come to church once every 6 months and want to be a part of what goes on week in and week out. Just make sure that those people that's making decisions for your church are coming on a regular basis. The duties of your consensus members: they attend meetings and contribute to discussions in a positive way, and they make decisions about the team's area of ministry. One of the things I wanted to talk about is some churches will bump into, if teams have been put together for a while and then you've got some strong leaders in those teams, sometimes authority become a little bit of a challenge, and they've got to understand that the authority comes from Christ, and He has given the elders and the pastor the authorities to create those teams and put those teams in place. And also, if a team is going rogue, just for lack of better words, the elders and the pastor do have the authority to shut that deal down and kind of clean that situation up. In 1 Peter 5, it talks about that. Talks about, so I exhort the elders among you, as a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that's going to be revealed. Shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you, not for shameful gain, but eagerly, not domineering over those in your charge, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive unfading glory, crown of glory. Guys, as elders and shepherds, you're there for the authority. We like to say it's elder role, not elder rule. Guys, just do what Christ, follow Christ. Don't try to make it a personal deal. Look at the Word. The Word gives us the answers. Just try to do what we're supposed to do. And that goes from the lead shepherd to the elders to the lay pastor, all the way through any type of servant in the church. Man, just kind of do what we're supposed to do as a servant and follow Christ. And most of that's going to work itself out. Let's see, you'll see that as you look in this book, there's 3 pages devoted to ministry teams. That page 13 also has some more additional team tips. Begin with prayer, state the agenda, follow the agenda. There's lots of things that you can kind of look at and study up if you're doing teams. But teams are so important to give the opportunity for people in your church to serve. Most of your traditional churches, they do have the committees and this and that. But I'm telling you, the use of ministry teams, if it's implemented correctly, you can see people work their way from not even being plugged in at church, not even going to church. I've seen so many people through the arena ministry. Man, they come to an event. They come to rope. They come to get on a bull. They come to get on a bucking horse or whatever. And then if you look forward 2 or 3 years, now they're coming to church on a regular basis. Now they're serving in church, possibly even in a leadership role in church. Guys, ministry teams allowed those guys, even when they was rough around the edge, to come hang out with other believers and other men that's trying to walk that life. And by giving them that opportunity in that environment, man, it changed their friend structure, their friend circle. And then little by little, it changed their life. You know, so ministry team gives an opportunity, if we use it correctly as a church, not only does it take the pressure off of the pastors from having to be everywhere and anywhere throughout the week, because they've got enough going on with just trying to prepare to deliver the word and love on families as a need. They don't need to be dealing with a burnout light socket or a light bulb or, you know, dragging the arena or, you know, children's stuff. Man, just let them do what they need to do, and then give others the opportunity to plug in those holes with these ministry teams. So that's what I've got this morning on ministry teams. I'm a little early, but you know, there's no use in sitting up here, and if you got questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. We're going to do a question and answer session at the end of the day, but I think right now we're going to give everybody a break